Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Stackley, Secretary Stackley, one specific question. Last May, in response to a request, the Navy stated the Navy position is that the 2002 Memorandum of Understanding, the so-called Swap 1 agreement, remains in full force and effect and requires the Navy to award a DDG 51 or equivalent workload to BIW if the Navy awards the LPD 28 on a sole source basis. And now I understand in this budget that's happening. The LPD 28 funds are going to be completed. Does that, what I just read from the response we got from the Navy, is that still the Navy's position? Because we got a response recently, just this week, that indicated you're considering options. I trust that means you're considering how to fulfill that, not whether or not it still exists.
Well, yes, sir. Let me first describe that the opening statement of that swap agreement talks about in order to provide stability for our shipbuilding industrial base and affordability for our ship programs, then the following. And in 2002, both shipyards were in peril that were involved in the swap. And so what that swap did was help stabilize both shipyards. At the time, the LPD 17 program, the ultimate quantity of 10 versus 11 versus 12 ships was undecided. So what was left open was that in the future, if further LPDs are awarded, then a commensurate DDG 51 or equivalent would be awarded to Bath Iron Works to balance out the swap agreement. In the past 13 years, it's been a very dynamic shipbuilding program back and forth between the two shipyards. So if we were to simply reassess, are we today stable, relatively stable across the two shipyards, across the shipbuilding program, you might get a different answer from are we or are we not one for one in terms of parity regarding the swap agreement. What we are doing is we're taking a look at first the state of the two shipyards, what it would infer in terms of an LPD 17, a further LPD 17 being awarded to Ingalls in accordance with our budget request, and then what would be commensurate at BIW to balance that out. We've had very preliminary discussions with industry. The award of that the LPD 28 would be late in 2016. So we believe we have time and tools available to balance out that agreement with both shipyards.
But it is your intent to follow through on the phrase you're using as balance out.
I think balance out because what we're down to looking at is workload and timing of that workload. The timing for the LPD 28 award might not be the right time for the balancing workload at Bath Iron Works.
Fine. On the larger question, I really appreciate the report that was submitted a couple of weeks ago. I would commend it to my colleagues on the Navy Shipbuilding Industrial Base. It's sobering reading, particularly a chart on, let's see, trying to find the page number. Well, it's figure 4.5, which indicates that shipbuilding employment, which averaged about 60,000 throughout the country for the last almost 20 years, is now down by a third. Sure. And that's employment is part of the picture, also investment and the web of suppliers that's at risk. My concern is that decisions we make today, if we don't replace sequestration, decisions we make today to defer shipbuilding programs will have 30-year consequences that we can't foresee. Is that your view?
Yes, sir. We have several shipyards in our industrial base that are in a very fragile position. And
we don't have that many shipyards. It's not like we have 50 shipyards out there.
We have, as I described in my opening statement, we have 8 shipyards currently building U.S. Navy ships. And of those 8 shipyards, about half of them are a single contract away from being what I would call not viable. In other words, the workload drops below the point at which the shipyard can sustain the investment that it needs to be competitive, and the loss of skilled labor that comes with the breakage of a contract. They'd be challenged to be able to recover that skilled labor. And so they would quickly find themselves outside of the market.
And what that results in is a lack of capacity to meet the country's needs, both now and certainly in the future.
You lose capacity and you also lose competition.
And losing competition means that the Navy doesn't get the best price.
Yes, sir.
And the other problem, as I understand it, is that it makes it very difficult, the current budgetary situation, to do multi-year contracts, which is another way the taxpayers can save money on these projects.
I think the Congress has been very helpful with regards to multi-year. As we are able to bring forward the business case that argues for a multi-year contract where the savings are achieved, Congress has been supportive of those cases. So today, the Virginia multi-year has been successful. We're hitting the targets on that contract. The DG 51 multi-year, likewise. So as we're able to bring the business case forward, Congress has been supportive.
But if we reimpose sequestration this year, as you've testified, that would be a severe impact across the board.
What that undercuts is our business case, because it destabilizes the shipbuilding program, and it makes it harder for us to be able to certify that that we have enough stability in order to come forward with that multi-year request.
Well, most of us have been in hearings in recent weeks with regard to what our potential adversaries are doing, particularly China and Russia, and they are on a very aggressive buildup in both areas. It would be ironic and dangerous, it seems to me, to be following the opposite course.
Concur.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.